I still can't shake the feeling that Amy Lynn Bradley's story is one of the most disturbing missing persons cases of our time. A vibrant young woman full of life vanishes without a trace right in the middle of the ocean. No clear evidence, no goodbyes, just gone. But what's even more terrifying, the unsettling sightings, the whispers of human trafficking, the haunting possibility that Amy might still be out there, waiting to be found. Amy Lynn Bradley was 23 years old when she disappeared, and from the moment she stepped onto the Rhapsody of the Seas, she had no idea she was walking straight into a mystery that would haunt investigators for decades. Amy wasn't just another carefree vacationer. She was a strong-willed, independent young woman, fiercely protective of those she loved. She had an adventurous spirit, but she was also cautious. Growing up in Virginia, she was a talented athlete, excelling in basketball and swimming. She had just graduated from Longwood University with a degree in physical education, and a job offer was waiting for her when she returned home. Her parents, Ron and Eva Bradley, adored her, and she shared a close bond with her younger brother Brad. They were the kind of family who genuinely enjoyed spending time together, so when the opportunity for a Caribbean cruise came up, it felt like the perfect chance to relax. At first, the trip was everything they had hoped for: sun-soaked days, tropical drinks, and warm ocean breezes. The Rhapsody of the Seas was a massive cruise liner stretching nearly 1,000 feet long, capable of holding over 2,000 passengers. It had everything: multiple bars, a nightclub, fine dining, pools, and even an onboard casino. But despite the beautiful surroundings, Amy seemed a little on edge. Her parents later recalled that Amy had expressed unease about certain crew members, particularly some of the waiters and musicians who worked on the ship. It wasn't just a feeling of discomfort, she had actually told her family she didn't trust them. Ron later admitted that if he had known just how serious those concerns were, he would have never let Amy out of his sight. The ship had departed from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and was making its way toward Curacao, one of the most stunning islands in the Caribbean. As the Bradleys enjoyed their trip, they had no idea that within hours, their dream vacation would turn into an unspeakable nightmare. March 23, 1998, the last night anyone would see Amy Lynn Bradley alive. That evening, the ship came alive with music, laughter, and celebration. The Bradleys were making the most of their trip, enjoying a night of entertainment. Amy and her brother, Brad, decided to check out the ship's nightclub, where a live band, Blue Orchid, was performing. Passengers who were there that night recalled seeing Amy dancing, drinking, and laughing. She had been in high spirits, chatting with people and blending into the carefree energy of the night. One person in particular seemed to be paying special attention to her: Alistair "Yellow" Douglas, the band's drummer. Witnesses said Amy and Yellow were dancing closely, and at one point she was even seen sitting on the edge of the band's stage talking to him. It's unclear what they talked about, but something about his interactions with Amy raised red flags later on. At around 3:30 am, Amy decided to head back to her family's cabin. Brad was the last person to see her before she left the club. They walked back together, but he didn't think much of it at the time. He assumed she was just heading to bed like any other night. At around 5:30 am, Ron woke up briefly and saw Amy sitting out on the balcony. She seemed relaxed, looking out over the ocean, maybe lost in thought. And then she was gone. By 6 am, Amy had disappeared without a trace. What happened in those 30 short minutes? Was she lured away by someone? Did she see something she wasn't supposed to? Or was there someone already waiting in the shadows, watching her every move? At 5:30 am, Amy was still awake. The sea stretched endlessly before her as she sat on the private balcony of her family's cabin, gazing out at the dark horizon. The ship's movement was gentle, and the faint sounds of distant laughter and music still carried through the air from the decks below. Ron Bradley stirred from his sleep, his eyes adjusting to the dim light. Through the open curtain, he caught a glimpse of his daughter. She was calm, just sitting there, looking out into the night. Nothing seemed out of place. She wasn't distressed. She wasn't packing her things. She wasn't making a phone call or trying to leave. Everything was normal. So Ron closed his eyes and drifted back to sleep. But when he woke up again, just 30 minutes later, Amy was gone. The balcony door was open. A faint ocean breeze fluttered the curtain. But Amy's shoes were still inside, neatly placed where she had left them. Her cigarettes, lighter, and ID all still there. It didn't make sense. If she had left voluntarily, she would have taken her shoes. If she had planned to go out, she would have at least closed the balcony door behind her. Instead, it was like she had been plucked from existence in the dead of night without a single sound. The ship was massive, filled with over 2,000 passengers and crew members spanning 11 decks. There were cameras in certain areas, but not everywhere. And somehow, in just 30 minutes, Amy Lynn Bradley had vanished into thin air. The Bradleys wasted no time. At 6:30 am, Ron and Eva were already out of their cabin, running through the ship, calling Amy's name. They searched the hallways, decks, lounges, anywhere she might have wandered off to. Brad joined them, panic settling in as he realized his sister was nowhere to be found. They knocked on doors, asking other passengers if they had seen her. No one had. And that's when Ron's gut told him something was very, very wrong. By 7 am, they reached out to the ship's staff. They expected an immediate response, an emergency announcement over the loudspeakers. They needed the crew to lock the ship down, check every inch of it before docking in Curacao. But the cruise line refused. The ship's staff was hesitant, assuring them Amy had probably just wandered off somewhere. They told the Bradleys to wait that she'd turn up. But Ron and Eva knew their daughter. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't drunk. She wouldn't have just vanished for no reason. By 8 am, their panic turned to horror. Despite their desperate pleas, Royal Caribbean did not immediately stop passengers from disembarking in Curacao. If Amy had been taken, she could now be anywhere on the island. Whoever had her, if she had been kidnapped, was already gone. By the time the first official ship-wide search began, hours had already passed. And by then, it was too late. The moment Amy was reported missing, Royal Caribbean staff had an immediate response. They suggested she had fallen overboard. It was the easiest explanation, the most convenient one. But her family wasn't buying it. Amy had been a lifeguard. She was an excellent swimmer, strong and athletic. If she had fallen from the ship, wouldn't she have been able to survive long enough to call for help? Besides, it wasn't as if the ship was traveling through stormy, turbulent waters. The currents that morning were relatively calm. And even if she had fallen, someone should have heard a splash. Someone should have seen something. Yet, there was no sound, no disturbance, no sign of panic. More importantly, if Amy had somehow gone overboard, there should have been physical evidence, a shoe, a piece of clothing, something floating in the water. But when the ship's staff finally searched the surrounding waters, they found nothing. No body, no splash, no evidence at all. Amy had vanished, but the ocean wasn't the one that took her. And as the Bradleys kept pushing for answers, a much darker theory began to emerge. The overboard theory didn't last long because passengers started coming forward with disturbing reports. Multiple people claimed they had seen Amy after she had disappeared. One witness, a man on the ship, swore he saw Amy in an elevator. She wasn't alone. She was with a crew member, and she looked anxious, uncomfortable, like she was trying not to be noticed. Another witness claimed to have seen a woman resembling Amy on the upper deck that same morning, right after she vanished. She was walking quickly, looking around nervously, as if she was trying to avoid someone. But by the time security checked the area, there was nothing. No Amy, no trace of her. And that's when the most chilling possibility of all came into play. What if Amy never left the ship voluntarily? What if she had been lured, trapped, or taken? And if that was the case, then the real question was, by whom? As the days passed, the Bradleys heard whispers, rumors that certain crew members made passengers uneasy, particularly young women traveling alone. Other female passengers came forward, saying they had felt watched. Some claimed they were followed by crew members in the hallways, while others reported inappropriate flirtations and unwanted attention. Amy had mentioned something similar to her parents before she vanished. She wasn't just uncomfortable, she had told them she didn't trust some of the men on board. Then there was Alistair Yellow Douglas. The last night Amy was seen alive, she had been dancing with him. Witnesses said they seemed friendly, but how much did she really know about him? Bradley family friend Frank Jones, a former Special Forces officer, later investigated the case and suggested that Yellow had been paying special attention to Amy all night, and he wasn't the only one. Some crew members asked Amy to go to shore with them the next day. It was an offer she turned down. Was it a simple invitation, or was it something more sinister? The more her family learned, the more they became convinced Amy hadn't just disappeared. Someone had taken her, and they were about to hear something even more disturbing. 2 years after Amy vanished, a former US Navy officer was sitting in a dimly lit brothel in Curacao, waiting for a drink. It was just another night, until he saw her. A woman, thin, pale, with hollow eyes, walked in. Something about her seemed off. She wasn't acting like the other women in the room. She looked terrified. And then she spoke to him. "My name is Amy Bradley," she said. "Please help me." Before he could react, two men grabbed her and pulled her away. At the time, he had no idea who she was. But years later, when he saw a photo of Amy in the news, his stomach dropped. It was her. He was sure of it. If this was true, then Amy hadn't drowned. She hadn't simply disappeared. She had been trafficked. And the worst part, she was still out there. In 2005, 7 years after Amy's disappearance, her parents received a chilling new lead. An anonymous email landed in their inbox. No message, no explanation, just an attachment. A photograph. The image showed a woman sitting on a bed, dressed in provocative lingerie. The room was cold and uninviting, sterile, almost like a cheap motel or a brothel. And the woman. She looked eerily similar to Amy Lynn Bradley. Sound, deep, sharp inhale. Her hair was different, longer, darker, but the face, the structure, the eyes, they were almost identical. The Bradleys wasted no time. They sent the photo to forensic experts. They needed answers. After careful analysis, investigators came to a haunting conclusion. There was a high probability that the woman in the photo was Amy. But who took this picture? And why would they send it to her family? The implications were horrifying. Had someone been taunting them? Sending proof that Amy was still alive but unreachable? Or was this a cry for help, a breadcrumb left behind, hoping someone would finally follow the trail? Amy's parents were left with one gut-wrenching thought. If this was her, then she wasn't just missing. She was being held against her will. Over the years, multiple witnesses came forward with chilling claims. They weren't just saying they thought they saw Amy. They were saying they saw a woman trapped, controlled, terrified. One tourist claimed they saw a woman matching Amy's description on a beach in Curacao. She wasn't alone. She was with two men who never let her out of their sight. Another sighting came from a shopping mall in a different Caribbean location. A woman, thin, anxious, with the same piercing green eyes, was walking with a group of men. She made eye contact with the witness and mouthed the words, "Help me." And then she was gone. Sound, a heartbeat, slow and heavy. Every sighting followed the same pattern. Amy, alive but trapped, always with handlers, always one step ahead of rescue. But with each sighting, each possible lead, Amy remained just out of reach. So close, but never close enough. From the beginning, the ship's crew had been acting strangely. Passengers had already reported seeing Amy in an elevator with a crew member looking uneasy. Others swore they saw a woman resembling Amy on the upper deck, avoiding eye contact. But what really unsettled the Bradleys was the behavior of some of the ship's staff after she vanished. Several crew members who had interacted with Amy before her disappearance refused to speak to investigators. Others seemed nervous, evasive, like they knew something but were too afraid to talk. Then there was the most chilling detail. Several of them had taken photos of Amy before she disappeared. Her parents recalled one particular waiter who had been unusually friendly with Amy, even inviting her to go to shore with him in Curacao, something Amy refused. Had she been marked? Had someone on the ship selected her as a target before she even knew it? And if so, how far did the cover-up go? The most disturbing theory pointed to human trafficking. Amy's case fit a terrifying pattern: young, attractive tourists vanishing without a trace, only to be later spotted in brothels or in the company of dangerous men. The brothel witness in Curacao. The tourist on the beach who saw her being watched by two men. The shopping mall sighting where she mouthed, "Help me," before being pulled away. The sightings weren't random. If Amy was being trafficked, she wouldn't have been able to escape easily. She would have been moved from location to location, constantly watched, unable to reach out for help without facing severe punishment or worse. Was she forced into a life she never could have imagined? And if so, was she still living it today? From the very beginning, Royal Caribbean's response raised suspicions. The Bradleys begged the staff to make an emergency announcement to lock the ship down before it docked in Curacao. They refused. By the time they finally conducted a ship-wide search, hours had passed. Plenty of time for someone to move Amy off the ship. Was it pure negligence or something worse? Had they ignored the urgency of the situation to protect their reputation? Or had someone within the ship's staff been directly involved? One thing was certain: the delay sealed Amy's fate. Over the years, other theories emerged, but many of them didn't make sense. Some suggested Amy may have voluntarily disappeared, choosing to start a new life. But nothing in her personality, actions, or plans suggested she would abandon her family like that. Then there was the overboard theory, which had been dismissed early on. No sign of a fall, no splash, no body, nothing. So the focus remained on one question: who took Amy? And why was every new clue leading in the same horrifying direction? If those sightings were real, then Amy wasn't just missing, she was alive. But where? If she had been trafficked, she could have been moved to a different country, hidden away in a world where she couldn't be found. Victims of human trafficking often end up in situations where they are completely controlled, their identities erased, their choices stolen. If Amy was still alive, she might not even have the ability to reach out for help anymore. And that was the most terrifying thought of all. For over 2 decades, Amy's family has lived in limbo, caught between hope and despair. Every phone call, every news article, every anonymous tip could be the moment that changes everything. Or it could be another dead end. Amy's mother, Eva, once said, "The hardest part is not knowing. Is she out there? Is she scared? Does she think we stopped looking?" But they never stopped looking, and they never will. Despite the years that have passed, the search for Amy is still active. Her case remains open, and the FBI still lists her as a missing person. There is a reward for information leading to her whereabouts. Every now and then, a new lead surfaces, bringing the lingering question back into focus. What really happened to Amy Lynn Bradley? With every new clue, every eerie sighting, one thing remains undeniable: someone out there knows the truth. Maybe it was a crew member. Maybe it was a trafficking ring. Maybe Amy is still alive, waiting for someone to finally find her. But unless someone comes forward, unless a mistake is made, the truth will remain buried in the shadows of the Caribbean. And that's the most haunting thought of all. More than 2 decades have passed since Amy Lynn Bradley vanished without a trace. Her family has searched tirelessly, following every lead, every rumor, every possible sighting, but they still don't have the one thing they need most: answers. The FBI, Interpol, and private investigators have all been involved at different times. They've explored countless theories, but none have led to Amy's safe return. Over the years, age-progressed photos have been released, attempting to show what Amy might look like now. But despite continued media coverage, including features on America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries, the trail remains frustratingly cold. Yet her family refuses to give up. Her mother, Eva, once said, "I go to bed every night thinking about Amy, and I wake up every morning thinking about Amy. That will never change." Her father, Ron, has spent years questioning every decision that morning. "I should have stayed awake. I should have talked to her. I should have done more." The emotional toll on the Bradley family is immeasurable, living in a state of perpetual hope and heartbreak, waiting for a call that may never come. But the biggest tragedy: Amy's case remains one of the most disturbing unsolved disappearances in modern history, and someone out there knows the truth. For over 25 years, the same unsettling questions have lingered, questions that no one has been able to answer. Was Amy targeted the moment she stepped on board? Did someone on that ship plan her disappearance, knowing they could get away with it? If she was trafficked, is she still alive somewhere, trapped in an unimaginable nightmare? Did Royal Caribbean's hesitation cost her life? Why did sightings continue for years if she was gone? And the most chilling question of all: did someone on that ship know exactly what happened and keep it a secret all these years? Amy Lynn Bradley's story remains a mystery, a case filled with missed opportunities, eerie coincidences, and the terrifying possibility that she may still be out there, waiting to be found. But unless someone comes forward, unless the right piece of evidence finally surfaces, the truth about what happened to Amy Lynn Bradley may forever remain lost at sea.